Conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Would you leave it to chance? Join the authors of Design to Change and explore this series of conversations with designers and event owners. Driven by the need and conversations with event owners and event designers who use the event canvas around the world, this series explores the depths of conversations to elevate your abilities to look and act beyond the now. Episodes are hosted by Ruud Janssen, Friesen, Dennis Lara, and Paul Rubens, with illustrious changemakers, designers, and pioneers in the field of design and beyond. To explore these conversations and additional content, visit designtochange.online. For now, let's start the conversation.
All right. Welcome back. Ruud Janssen here, your host of the Design to Change podcast. We have a very special episode because we hardly ever do any of these. Today I have with me Fred Schindler, who you know from previous episodes, and it's the year 1 plus 5, 1 plus 1.5. And Fred, welcome back to the show.
Great to see you, Ruud.
Absolutely. Now, we have a special edition because last time was a kind of a sneak preview of this very first edition. And Fred Schindler is the event owner of an event that was created over, I would say, a year and a bit ago, right? In the summer of last year, where we started designing at large, and you were the VP of Technical Activities at IEEE. Now, in the meantime, IEEE has grown over 500,000 members. I saw the announcements popping up on LinkedIn left and right.
Right.
And in October, you've held the brand new IEEE Clean Tech and Climate Change Conference. How do you feel right now?
It's all good in the rearview mirror.
It's all good in the rearview mirror. Yeah. I remember last time the anticipation of looking forward to an event. That was on the 14th of August. We were looking at the beginning of October. We're now on the 6th of November. Tell us, when you look through the rearview mirror, what do you see right now?
It was interesting as we went through the event. I mean, the buildup, of course, is one thing, but during the event, kind of the motivation gelled, and I came to realize that we omitted a key stakeholder, and that clarity came during the event to me.
Wow. And at what point during the event did that kind of realization come to be?
Well, so the germ came from an opening reception we had at City Chambers in Glasgow. And Bailey, which is like a city council person, Bailey Annette Christie read a poem from, I forget her first name, Janie, who was the poet laureate of Scotland, that she had read at COP26. And it closed with an appeal to look out for the next generation, in so many words. And that really struck me, kind of in an emotional way. And anyone that has talked to me in the last 2.5 years has had the pleasure of viewing a photograph of my grandson,
which I saw as the closing,
which ended up being the closing
as well. Yeah.
And so that emotional chord that was struck with that poem the night before the conference started, kind of simmered in my mind. And then the day of the closing in the morning, we're talking about, okay, well, what do we want to have as our message at the closing? And I realized, it's him, it's the grandson. So in the closing, in a fun kind of way, I referenced my grandson as a surrogate for that generation. And that's the real stakeholder here.
Absolutely.
That's why I care.
Yeah. And so the drive for all these professional imperatives and the blueprint of creating this new event around a single topic and making sure you address it in the professional association of all the specialists that, across all the different stakeholders. I think we analyzed a total of 13, when we were in Hawaii last year. I know that the next generation students and young professionals were part of that analysis, but the generation that it really impacts and concerns, which, like you mentioned, I think in your closing keynote, we'll add the link to the show notes if you want to see that closing message, which I think is very powerful because behavior doesn't get changed unless you address the emotions that underlie the necessary behavior change.
Yep.
When that happened to you during that opening reception, and subsequently, the program is set and everything's happening, and how does that change? Does that change the conversations you're having, or does it change the direction in which you're addressing things, or how does that resonate with you as the event owner in a moment like that, where technically you can't change that much anymore, right?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I could change at that point was the closing, and we hadn't articulated exactly what the closing was yet. We were kind of collecting thoughts as the event went along.
Yeah.
So it was really just the morning of the last day that it came together.
That's powerful. In the last episode, when we were about a month out, when, the things are gelling in place, and maybe, as a learning from this, I think leaving the closing of something that is still deploying over a 2-day, 2.5-day period, open for outcomes that are not pre-chewed or not pre-scripted is actually something that's, although you don't leave it to chance, but you have to leave a serendipitous moment of realization in this whole thing as an event owner, to give that shape and form. Do you think the impact of the event, the way you've thought about it when you were briefing it in Hawaii back in August of 2024, the intentions that were stated at the time, the analysis we did, the prototypes we made, ultimately it turns into an event of what it is. Could you describe in a nutshell kind of the event structure and what you recall of it, of how it took place in Glasgow in early October?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, pragmatism rules. So as we're putting the event together and inviting people, and some are able to participate and some aren't, you need to make decisions about how to organize things. This person can be available on this day, and this group isn't going to be able to participate. So you do the best you can with what you have.
And so when you're talking about, if you would look back at the actual promise, right, dive into the cutting edge of clean tech innovation at the IEEE Tech Summit, a single topic conference across a big topic of clean tech innovation, 2 days, 300 global participants, featured speakers. How many people ended up going to the event?
200.
200 people.
Yeah.
And looking at this first edition, how would you consider, let's say, taking into account everything you knew as the organizing committee, as the event owner, how do you see the future of this event, and how does it take shape within the Tech Summit series?
Well, so the Tech Summit series, the topic of each Tech Summit is selected by the Vice President of Technical Activities from the prior year. So the topic of the next Tech Summit has been selected by Delma Novak, who's the current Vice President of Technical Activities, and she wants to do something on the topic of AI ethics, and it's a great topic as well.
Yeah.
One thing that really became clear as we're putting together the program was that this is clean tech is a hot topic, an important topic, that has a lot of attention around the world. So it was great in terms of having a topic that we all convene on,
Yeah.
but it's also a crowded space.
Hmm.
There are lots and lots of events in this space, which makes it hard to stand out,
Hmm.
which is among the challenges in organizing it. You know, why would people come to this event when they're at some other event?
Yeah.
There happened to be another IEEE sponsored event in Glasgow, largely overlapping with this, that we weren't aware of until we got deep into organizing after we'd signed our contracts.
Hmm.
And it was at least tangential to
Yeah.
our topic. It was had to do with modern grid. It was called the eGrid conference. So, uh, aligned with what we're trying to do, and in some ways, what an opportunity. We could invite some of those people to come and spend a little time with us. Um, we had a reception at City Chambers the night before our conference opened. They actually had their reception at City Chambers the same night, the first night of their event.
Yeah.
So we had to be careful about the signage so people knew which IEEE event to attend.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And this is
uh,
what happens when you are such an active organization in so many different
right,
spaces across
right.
the world in so many different sections and subtopics. Now, if I, as a non-IEEE member, would have immersed myself in reception A, which was about the single topic clean tech addressing the broad spectrum IEEE expertise at large, versus the regional conference, what would some of the distinctions have been, do you think, for me as a participant?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, for one thing, the other event was not a regional one. It was a big international conference,
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
more technically specialized,
Yeah.
sponsored by a couple of our technical societies. Um, the receptions are not a forum for technical content, right? These are social events and are opportunities for collisions, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you probably would have had a more pointed conversation about a narrower set of topics at their reception than at ours.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had an invited speaker. We had invited the essentially mayor, Lord Provost, who had accepted, and then at the last moment sent this Bailey, Ned Christie, who really gave an excellent speech. Um, COP26 took place in Glasgow, and even before then, Glasgow really embraced climate change and sustainability as their
Mm,
mission. So
mm.
Glasgow is very well aligned with what we're trying to talk about. And so her speech was very well aligned with what we wanted to do, and she was well prepared. So that was really a great opening.
And it's interesting, I think, that the choice of a destination and um, uh, the applicability of a topic to the context of where you host the event is a critical factor,
Mhm.
often, right, for getting this match to come off the ground and to make it resonate based on something. Now, we're also 4 days out of COP30, right, which is about to happen in Belém in
Mhm.
Brazil. It seems like there's a consistent series of conferences. You could probably, like you mentioned, there's a lot of conferences in this space. You could probably spend a full year going to conferences back to back in the climate change and clean tech space, and discover everything that needs to be discovered in its current state.
Yeah.
Um, how does that how does that resonate? Because last time we spoke a little bit about, breaking organizational silos through cross-disciplinary events, right? This, like you mentioned, this one event was highly specialized. This event was designed to be cross-siloed across all of the different specialties of IEEE. Do you think that the Tech Summit as such, as its first edition and the thoughts you had behind it, Um, uh, how does that format work? How did it work in its first edition?
Time will tell. If we start to see more collaborations across the organization, then we were effective.
Yeah.
As the program came together, um, the ideas came from silos. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Um, so we had proposals for panel sessions that came from one specific community, invited speakers from that community.
Hmm.
And so then we worked whenever we could to try to broaden uh, that panel, bring somebody from an adjoining community
Yeah.
to cut across the silo. So um, it was, and in the end we were pragmatic. So, the best content we can get, we'll go with it. But having everyone in the same room talking about similar things was useful. One of the interesting topics was sustainability in aviation. Aviation is obviously a huge part of our lives, our economies,
Yeah.
and fossil fuels are critical
Yeah.
for these large airliners. There's nothing with the kind of energy density that jet fuel or fossil fuels in general have. So, battery electric airplanes are being developed, but not for transcontinental flight. So that was an interesting topic, and we had two very different views. Well, I shouldn't say very different. In the end, I think they were pretty closely aligned, but they came from different perspectives. So we had two
Hmm.
speakers on in that general topic. One was from inside of IEEE, and one was from outside of IEEE. He may have been a member. I didn't ask.
Hmm.
But yeah, the one of them, as the other was speaking, was sitting close by and um, letting me know of his disagreement with what was being said, and then
Hmm.
he spoke, and it's like, I don't know. I heard essentially the same things from the two of you.
Okay.
So I chatted with him a little bit afterwards, and in the interim, the two of them had talked together, and I think he had concluded in the end that they were pretty well aligned. Now, if
Yeah.
anything came out of that, I don't know, um, but we did have lots of conversations from people with different perspectives, and the hope is that there's some collaborations that come out of that.
And very often this realization and taking the time to listen to each other's stories,
Mhm.
um, and allow yourself to process it as you're presenting, maybe as you're listening, as you're conversing with people. It's part of the magic of what happens when people get together, right? I think one of the things that came out of our last conversation when you talked about cross-disciplinary collaboration and technical communities, one of the aims or one of the things, desires behind this tech summit is to break, or to I think we said, you said we're trying to bring people together from across technical communities that don't necessarily mix, right? We have some panels where the people contributing aren't all from the same community, and we have some non-IEEE people on our panels. And so learning through that technical diversity was one of the things that you were aiming for.
Right.
Um, is a 2 day format, 2.5 day if you have the opening reception, and then 2 days. Does that allow people to, between opening and closing, to take the time to change their perspectives or to connect to other people? Is that the right amount of time for 200 people to gather, do you find?
I think it's an appropriate amount of time. Longer would give you more opportunity to, you know, have more varied conversations. But longer events are harder to draw people to. I mean, 2 days is something that generally people can work into their schedules.
Mm,
Shorter is just not enough time. And so what's key is making sure that there's enough time off provided. Um, breakfasts are an opportunity, breaks are an opportunity, lunches are an opportunity. Um, breakfast we didn't really include, but breaks were certainly nice opportunities. And lunches, we made sure we provided lunch, so we were all sitting together in a big room, and you know, it, it you know, uh, people's behaviors vary. I've learned over time that my best move is to find a table with nobody I know, which is not comfortable for me at all. But find a table with nobody I know and ask if I can join them. And
Yeah.
from that, generally, there are some outstanding conversations that that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that come up.
Because, obviously you're very visible as the event owner. You open the conference, you close the
Mhm.
conference, people, would gravitate in an audience towards you. Now, let's zoom out at, obviously your grandkid is like, two generations apart, right? But the next generation that was there, I know you made a significant effort to engage the global startup competition, right?
Mhm.
And structure mentorship and embed it into this conference. Now you had at the time when we spoke last time, you had 170 video submissions in two categories come in. How did
Mhm.
that pan out? How did that
It
how
was
did that
awesome.
work?
That was the highlight of the event. No question. We had two tracks, the ideation track and the startup track. We decided to have one of them essentially as the end of each day.
Hmm.
So we'd wrap up with a pitch competition.
Yeah.
So from those 170, we invited five each from ideation and startup, and those finalists were given mentorship, and we supported their travel to join
Hmm.
us. For the ideation track, only four of them were actually able to attend, so we had a competition with four. And that was very good.
Hmm.
Um, the winner had a kind of a biodegradable packaging concept. Um, and they might have had an unfair advantage because they were further along. They could
Okay.
have actually been in the startup track.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think they were the pretty clear winner. But the pitches were very good. The judges took it very seriously, and there was some drama, and it was fun. On day two, we had the startup track, and all five of them were there. And we had our closing, which where I spoke for 10 minutes after that. But you know, really the capstone of the event was the pitch competition for the startup track, and they were all exceptional. I was impressed at the quality of startups that decided to randomly submit to this event that they'd never heard of before. And
Which
I
didn't exist
credit
before either, right? It
right,
was a
right.
first. Yeah.
Yeah, and I credit the engagement we had with the IEEE young professionals and student activities and entrepreneurship uh, organizations in putting this together. Um, and the judges had such a hard time picking the best of this. I mean, it took them a very long time to do their judging. So we had to figure out a way to entertain the crowd while we were waiting longer than anticipated for
Hmm.
the result. And then when they came back, instead of picking a winner and a runner-up, they came out with a winner and two runners-up because they
Okay.
just couldn't resolve that.
Yeah.
Um, and it really just energized everybody. So that was definitely a highlight. Um,
Which kind of speaks to the, balancing the serendipity and the structure of the event
yeah,
design, where
yeah.
when that happens, yeah, it's not a single solution, a silver bullet that's going to change climate change or clean tech as such. So I think it's really encouraging and exciting to hear that the quality of those competitions and whether it's ideation or startup tracks, those are the inspiration for the ones that are
Mm,
um, in positions of power and in positions of being able to influence things, make the connection to the next generation, I suppose. And that's one of the core purposes, I think, as well, that, I've heard many people at IEEE say is that it gives you unforeseen connections to opportunities in a much larger community to get things done, right? To get things off the ground and to make the connections.
Yeah, it was also
Um,
great to see that with these ideation and startups, there was a lot of really interesting, novel, new tech that's being worked on that
mhm,
really is tech for good. Um, I mean, you look at what tech has done over the last 20 years, it's hard to convince yourself it's all for the good, right?
mhm, mhm.
Big tech has really kind of dominated society for good and bad lately. So it's great to see emerging tech that really is targeted to pretty universal benefit.
Yeah, and I think the climate change urgency and real world impact of this kind of work motivates that generation too, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the motivation has to be there, or is maybe also fueled by the need and necessity to come up with solutions and to problems that have been created
Yeah,
by previous generations, right?
right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, very exciting to see that. Um, if you would take a magic wand and look into the future of the Tech Summit, like maybe 5 years from today, and people look back and go, "Oh, I remember I was at the first one." What would you wish for this event to do, like in 2030?
Well, I'm not going to refer to a topic, but if we have 300 to 500 people, they all paid full registration because we ended up giving away a bunch of discounts at the end to encourage people to attend.
Hmm.
Um, that it we had a lot of contributions from outside of the IEEE that we didn't really have to struggle to pull in. Um, that would be great. IEEE has a tremendous opportunity to influence the development of technology. Our slogan motto, which is rooted in our certificate of incorporation, is
Hmm.
to advance technology for the benefit of humanity,
Yeah.
which is a great mission. Um, but if people don't really know who we are, we can't really fulfill that mission.
Hmm.
So we need to have impact. Um, so um, we're not as well known as we ought to be, and that hampers our ability to have influence. So
Hmm.
if we really do want um, to make sure that technology serves the world of my grandson, then we need to make sure that sustainability is addressed. We need to make sure that AI serves us, um,
Hmm.
doesn't harm us. We need to worry about cybersecurity, um, you know, uh, the way we've become the product in a lot of these big tech platforms. You know, I'm not looking forward to my grandson being monetized.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think these are platformal changes, right? That
Yeah.
are they're almost like if you're born into this. I mean, Fred, you and I think many of the people listening to this podcast can remember a world before podcasts or before
Mhm.
before LinkedIn or
Right.
before all those different social platforms. As a matter of fact, one of our previous guests on this show um, was mentioning that we have an opportunity as mankind where, yeah, yes, we saw the advent of internet, we saw the advent of social media, and all of them happened to us, right? Now, with the advent of AI, we have an opportunity to um, think in the third round about what this means as a technological change for what we do as humanity. And I think when you say
Mhm.
advanced technology for the benefit of humanity, and you think 2 or 3 generations down the line how they will experience this, it's really hard to fathom that or like to figure out where it might end up or where it's going. But by bringing people together and thinking and talking and rubbing shoulders and disagreeing and agreeing and debating. I think that's without that, we aren't going to scope out the problem properly in order to solve it, right?
Yeah.
So,
And we need to be that platform at IEEE.
yeah,
We ought to be able to steer that discussion, and that
yeah,
just means we have to make sure we are more relevant. And this
yeah,
is, Tech Summit is an opportunity to do that.
yeah. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity of how you, when you were VP of Technical Activities, took on the task of initiating a new type of conference, right? Thinking beyond the silos and thinking, and every iteration or design that you do, getting a large group of stakeholders to think together about something is a really important breaking point, is a starting point of something um, that is going to take time to build, but it's also the urgency is there for it to have relevance. And I think um, I'm grateful for, and I really appreciate the fact that speaking about this a year and a half ago, doing the event design, speaking about a month before the event and now a month after the event, it's really important for event owners to have that voice as well. I think
Mhm.
many of the event designers and event owners that we come across have a big burden, but also a big responsibility. Owning an event is not an easy thing, right? It might look very trivial, but there's a lot of moving parts. And I know you guys at IEEE have strong teams that are able to do this
Right.
kind of thing, but um, the way people spend their time and whether they do go to an event or not very much depends on its reputation, its recognition, its profile, and creating something new is difficult. Um,
Yeah.
but I commend you for doing it. And the
I'm,
the starting point is a good kind of first petri dish, right?
and you're right that we had a strong team as well. I mean, David Stankiewicz.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
He really carried a huge burden putting the program together. And then Crystal Edwards was our meeting planner. So, all the activities were organized, all the contracts she had to manage. So, that's a huge burden that those two picked up. And so,
yeah,
without that kind of support, it's really tough to pull off an event like this.
yeah. And so I think, the kind of structure that you guys put in place and the way it's being built out with 1,500 plus events per year, there are so many, and even you're so large that an adjacent conference taking place in the same city can actually happen,
Right.
and
Yep.
only very late on the radar do you perceive
Right.
it to be the case.
Yep.
There's probably a reason and a function for that as well, right? So I think the overlap creates opportunity, and I think that's let's put it this way: event ownership is not for the faint at heart, right?
No,
You
no,
need
it's
to
not.
master your profession,
Right.
and you need to be confident after you said we should do an event, right?
Right.
About
Yep.
what comes, the deluge that comes after that,
Yep.
um, is something that's it's fascinating, it's very powerful, and we're happy that you take these chances and opportunities to share that experience. If you would look back, what is one thing you would do differently as a result of this first event, just as a learning?
I have a very narrow thing. So I've through the experience of COVID, I've concluded that hybrid events suck. Face-to-face events are great.
Yeah.
Virtual events are fine.
Hmm.
Doing them both is just the worst of both worlds. Not the best of both, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Um, and we made a compromise in our event, and so we allowed one person to speak to us remotely. So sort of hybrid. And David and the AV team uh, made sure that everything was fine ahead of time, tested everything out, and then when it was time for him to go on, there we see his face and his lips moving and nothing. Um, so we had to quickly shift the program and give the tech team a little time to work
Just
through. And then, he was speaking. He's associated with the UN. So it seemed like a worthwhile individual to get. Um, and he spoke from this lovely location, big glass walls, but people walking around behind him. So that was kind of a distraction. And
when you amplify the message on a big screen, it doesn't get better, right?
and then his slides were basically they'd written like this 50-page report, and he put it on slides for us. So the visuals that he put on the screen weren't helpful either. So whatever message he had, I think, was largely lost. So that was definitely not worth doing.
And I think that's a great, based on intuition experience, but also design restrictions you might have for people able to show up or not show up. I do feel, having remote speakers or pre-recorded content or things that are consumable outside of the zone to enable more conversation in the zone are probably very critical event design elements you need to think about carefully, right? Because they do detract significantly from our human interface can detect the 10 differences so easily. We cannot be fooled by these things, right? We want the real thing, however good or poor holographs or video projections or might be. I think it's a powerful lesson, right? So you have to choose. And by choosing, to exclude an external online audience from a live event is a very deliberate choice. Or to host everything online can be a very deliberate choice. Mixing two requires organizing two very specific different event tracks and different events stacked together, which much complicates the complexity of the event. Yeah,
absolutely.
Many of us have experienced it. And if it's done poorly, it detracts from the experience of both, right? Both those on site and online. Yeah,
it is the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Fred, what I'd love to do is I'd love to play the little video of the closing remark, because very often you don't take the time to think about these things enough. And now that we've teased people with it, obviously we can give them the link, but I think we should show them or listen to it if you don't mind. To see the end of the closing remarks of this actual conference on the 3rd of October. And let me just share that on the screen real quick to see if we can get that snippet. That's part of this closing. Here we go.
Something that I hope you learned. If you've come talk to me, you've probably seen this. And there's a reason I bring this up. So if you were lucky enough to join us at the reception at City Chambers Wednesday night, we heard a speech by Bailey Annette Christie, and she read a poem from the poet Kathleen Jamie, and I'm going to paraphrase from the end of it. And this is from the poem What the Clyde Said, the Clyde being the river that runs through the city. The poem starts talking about what the Clyde witnessed in the Industrial Revolution. And then towards the end, the Clyde is saying, "I'd rather keep afloat the hope of the young people. Fail them, and I will rise." So we're doing this for them. We're doing it for Jesse too, but we're doing it for them. So what's our message now? What's our big takeaway? A call to action. And when you look at this, look at the last phrase. It's for humanity, but for the next generation of humanity. Thank you.
For the next generation of humanity, right?
So
advancing technology for the benefit, not just of humanity.
The next generation of humanity.
For the next generation of humanity.
We need to amend our mission at the IEEE.
I wasn't after that, but it makes me think, right? Like as you say it, Yeah, because the technology we're operating today has been developed, maybe a decade ago, right? Or a decade and a half or longer ago.
Yep.
So if you want to influence how it benefits the future of humanity, the next generations of humanity, there's a big task today that needs to be done. And
Right.
I think the IEEE Technology Summit Clean Tech Solutions has been part of that first installment of the technology summits. Exciting to be part of it. Thank you for allowing us to hear your story of how that has worked for you, what it's done for IEEE, and what we can learn from it as event owners and event designers.
Yep. Well, thanks for your support, and thanks for these great conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, great.
You've been hanging out backstage on Design to Change Designer Conversations. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe and share conversations online using hashtag Design2Change and hashtag Event Canvas. Want more thought-provoking content like this? Visit design2change.online to purchase your copy of Design to Change, elevating your abilities to look and act beyond the now. Don't forget, it's more than just a book. Experience a hard copy, audio format, video format, and even augmented reality. Experience it in your style and format. Tune into our next episodes and hear from more designers and change makers. Until then, we look forward to our next conversation.